Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. I just want to go into a little flow and potentially talk a little bit about what I'm feeling in the collective. Maybe I should start with that. No, I'll start with flow. I'll probably weave in and out. So when I go into this space, I'm just tuning into my higher self. I'm tuning into the collective of frequencies that I'm connected to through my DNA, and share whatever comes through that would be helpful for whoever's tuning into this video. We're going to start by dropping into the heart. One of the biggest messages that's been coming through again and again is get back to the basics. Keep it simple, star seeds. Without getting lost in all of the crazy things that are going on, come back into the heart. So we're just going to take a moment and feel into the heart frequency, which is peace, breathing, spaciousness, bliss, which isn't to be confused necessarily with sunshine and rainbows, coherence, gratitude. So I'm just going to invite everybody to drop into the heart center. Take a deep breath into the center of the chest. Imagine that breath moving in and out of the heart. Feel that in your body. Imagine the heart filling up with this golden frequency of light and appreciation for our body, for our breath, for the air that we are surrounded with, for our lungs. And as we breathe that in, that gratitude, on the exhale, just inviting ourselves to release it out into the space that's around us, back into the air, to bring it back into us, to then send it out into the field that we exist within. Gratitude. I'm going to do a little bit of toning. This is meant to be felt. You can sing along if you want to. So sometimes just singing allows you to drop into the body. It connects you to your throat chakra. It connects you to the rest of your body. And obviously that wasn't singing, but just making those sounds, those om, 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 moving with that breath. And as we sound out, as we sing, we create a channel. We create a connection to that which is held within our form of communication that allows us to send out a signal from the inside out, from one perspective. It allows us to move energy through the voice canal and access a different part of the body that we are not used to necessarily accessing. Let us dip into this a little more clearly. For when we sound out, let us say, or take action, or an adjective, bring out our objective, bring through our adjectives, bring through that which it is that we are communicating through, we signal to the environment that we are in tune with, that we are connected to, that we are intrinsically part of. From our environment that is within, we create a connection point, a springboard, one might call it, to spring us into the motherboard that we are all connected into and through. We spring from that energy or frequency that is held within, and we send out the signal to the entire collective that we are connected to. And this collective is an energy of frequencies, or a grouping of frequency, sound, and light that we essentially then weave into through our communication. We create a conjunction point, if you will, a node, an ability to access the sound signature or sound frequency that allows us to send out our signal again and again. It allows us to express ourselves and to clear the distortion from one perspective that is not what we wish to dictate, to create from. Okay, so I'm being called to stop for just a moment and play with this. So what I'm seeing is when we send out a song that comes from the heart, or a sound that comes from the heart, that's what allows us to break through the distortion that we might be feeling in our bodies, that we might be feeling in the other signals and frequencies. I've talked about this in previous videos where we have this constant barrage of sound and signals that are going on all around us through EMF, through collective thought patterns, through energy coming up from the earth, through inorganic technology that we are basically being bombarded with in this now moment, depending on where our location is and depending on where our frequency is. When we have a higher frequency, I'm hearing a higher domain, we're not as, all of those things don't necessarily have as big of an impact on us. Yet there are moments where they can have a very strong signal, a very strong signature. So the stronger our signal is, and this isn't a matter of strength as in fight, it is a matter of literal heart coherence and moving through that and allowing ourselves to clear the disturbances in the field. So we're essentially disturbing the disturbances with this heart coherence, and it breaks apart some of those signals, and helps us to create a stronger signal, if that makes sense. And so by us shifting our signal and actually expelling some of the things that are inside of us through sound, but I'm being called to say doing this by ourselves. So creating the tones, singing, dancing, moving when we're by ourselves, so that when we do go out into the collective, everything goes into the collective. Everything is a wave. So there is a wave and it moves through this fabric that we're all woven into, that we're all creating. But essentially what I'm being shown is this allows us to do, when we sing, when we move this energy, when we bring it up through the throat, when we do go out into the field, or when we do interact with the rest of the field, it allows us to clear out the distortions then before we communicate, if that makes sense. I'm going to do some light language. Nushi wa e makuni ba ishi kui ti mua he ne ki ishi ti kune wa hai ne shikini bukuni wa shuyete ba yakuni ishi ni wa hai ishi ni ki ba kini wa hene. And there will be different intonations that are felt in the body when we recognize our own inclination to tune into certain intonations, meaning the more we are able to recognize what is coming from ourselves and what is coming from the outside, the more we are able to integrate and bring up more of what is truly coming from the inside. Moving from the inside out then allows us to create or to shout out our creations from less distortion. For many of us are picking up on these distorted frequencies and taking them on as our own. We feel as if the anxiety that we are feeling or repressing, so I'm being shown somebody that's like, loud noises, and a lot of us are going into this like sense of tightening up, and we're not sure why, and we're feeling anxiety, but really it's not our anxiety, it's our bodies responding to these electrical pulses that are part of what we're interwoven with in this reality. And I know that there's going to be some people out there that go, well, I don't want to be in that, or oh boy, I could go into so many different layers with that. But from one perspective, if we're part of the 3D, 4D reality, which many of us are, right, we're going to feel this. So the way that we can counteract that is by really balancing out ourselves and being able to communicate with our bodies. So feeling and recognizing that many of these distortions are in the process of being cleaned out gives us the ability to, I'm hearing, clean out the windpipes. So the more we can sound out and clear out that which has been locked into our system, allows us to lock into the higher system. Play on words. The stem of the brain, the activations that are going into the body. Recognizing that this is sometimes going to feel out of alignment. And until we get into the practice of discerning and using our own integrative medicine, the more we use our own medicine, it allows us to then change our adaptation, change how we are adapting to our environment, rather than, I'm hearing, coexisting. So we're coexisting in this environment, but that doesn't mean we have to take on all of this energy as our own. And this is a multi-layered, multi-dimensional message. That's not the only message. So you might be hearing something else from what I'm expressing, and that's okay too. So as we allow our body to make certain sounds and feel into what we are hearing come out from our sounds, it allows us to come out from underneath the barrage of sounds that are holding us down from one perspective. This is merely something that we are in the process of evolving around. So while we go through these experiences and while we experience some of these technological advancements, our body too must advance in order to balance what we are tuning into in frequency. Tuning into more frequently. So what I'm getting, and I've been kind of saying this before, is something's going on with technology, and we're really being bombarded with it right now. It's creating this feeling of anxiousness. Now, if you put that on top of the radio, EMF frequencies, everything I listed earlier, in addition, if you're in a place where you have a lot of technology all around you, you've got that on top of it. If you work in a hospital, right? If you work in a building with tons of computers and fluorescent lights. So it's really important right now to, I'm seeing a list and I'm hearing, let's just go through 5 steps. Get grounded, barefoot, outside, on the grass, in the dirt, minimum of 10 minutes a day, but the guides are recommending half hour minimum right now. I know I'm hearing some people say, well, if the technology is coming up from the inner earth, then aren't we absorbing that into our bodies? And this all goes back to the heart. So yes and no. If we're getting in natural settings where we're putting our feet in the ocean, in rivers, on rocks, in the dirt, in the grass, there's going to be that technology that's there, but we're counteracting it with our intention of connecting to Mother Earth Gaia. And also I'm being shown countering it through our heart. So our heart is an electromagnetic ball of energy. And if we can shift our frequency in our heart dynamics, it's a play on words, into a space of gratitude, I'm seeing so many things. It enhances our ability to balance out our glandular activities, meaning our pituitary gland, our pineal gland, because of the cortisol in our system. So it actually counters out some of those things. Number 2, sound. Play with it. When I first started going through some of my body activations, we'll call it, and I didn't know what was going on, thought I was losing it. I would be driving my car and I would just have this incredible urge just to wail, W-A-I-L, but it sounded like a whale, W-H-A-L-E. And I would just let out these sounds. And my friends, my dear sisters and I joke that we speak Dory. I speak whale from Dory from Finding Nemo. And it does, it feels like that. These weird noises come out. And lo and behold, eventually I started speaking light language from there. So just being aware of that, letting all of these sounds come out and not being afraid to speak. I notice that sometimes when I'm in deep contemplation, I don't speak. I want to just be in silence. And that's the third thing. It doesn't have to be in this order. I would say the first thing is get into the heart. So all of this be in the heart. You're in the heart, you're grounding. Heart energy down into the earth. Gratitude down into the earth, into the body. Number 2, make the sounds, bring them up from the heart. The lower gut, bring them up into the heart, send them out into the throat. Number 3, where was I going with that? Maybe I'm a little bit more like Dory than I, just with my whale sounds. Stillness, silence, being in silence, listening to the sound that we are hearing the hum of the earth, feeling the hum in the body, feeling and hearing the heartbeat, noticing the sounds that are coming out of the silence. So this fabric that we're in, there's a deep resonance to it. It's a sound that has a feeling associated with it. And when we can drop down into the body, because this is important, and I'm being called to bring this up, it isn't always about us getting up there. It is about us dropping into the body. And when we make these sounds, it helps us to feel. It helps us to raise our vibration, but we're not, and elevate ourselves in the body. So being in silence, using the sound, getting into the heart, all of this is intended focus, allows us to drop into the body, to drop down into the earth. It's not about us trying to get away from it. But in that silence, it does allow us to fully be enveloped within this space. And from another perspective, separate ourselves while we're in our bodies from some of the distractions and disturbances. We're able to go in deeper to ourselves, our higher self. So what does that mean? Meditation, breath work, all within that space of being in that silence. And when I say silence, I'm hearing PSI, and I'm seeing it having to do with weights and measures. Like we're allowing ourselves to hold this space of serenity. That takes practice. Doesn't always come easily. What was that? Was number 3. I know I said 5, so let me just feel what else was. I'm just seeing, look. I'm hearing to see with eyes to see and hear with ears to hear. So it's look and listen, but not to what it is that's being presented to us in the inorganic, or even what's being presented to us in what feels like it's real. It has more to do with us looking for our own synchronicities, our own symbols, and seeing it's the sound behind the sound. We're seeing it, we're feeling it. Listening with ears to hear, not listening to the story that's being presented or watching the stories that we're being told to watch, feeling into what's behind that, feeling into what's really being said. And this comes with practice as well. Using all of our senses essentially is the message. So I could break that into 4 and 5, listen and look, but it's just being aware and allowing ourselves to be aware from a place of gratitude, from a place of appreciation that we have all of these senses to utilize. Bring it all back into the heart. So those are just some of the things that I'm being shown right now are so important right now. And I'm going to do a follow-up video to this because there are things that are coming up in our reality and in our timeline in the near future that are maybe coming up now that are really going to require us to be steadfast, is what I'm hearing. So again, this comes back into steadfast. And I guess number 5, I'm going to say, is really take care of the body. All of the things I just mentioned have to do with the body and our emotional well-being, but really taking care of the body as our support system and emotionally supporting ourselves. So maybe there were 10 items. Doesn't matter. You get where I'm going with this, I hope. And as we access these different levels of consciousness by participating in these actions, by dropping into the body and the breath, by utilizing our heart as our compass, by utilizing our eyes as more than just what is in front of us, by walking in balance and harmony and listening to our feelings, listening to the feelings of others from a non-biased perspective, allowing ourselves to come into the creative oneness that we really are, enhances our creativity. Letting go of the need to direct where others are creatively expressing themselves allows us to enhance our own creativity, to move away from their energetic frequency and to move back into our own creative abundance. For this abundance is flowing at an all-time high. I'm hearing it's an arcing right now. It's a high frequency bandwidth. And so the more we are allowing our bodies to adapt to the barrage of frequencies, actually allows us to create from a deeper frequency conduction resonance. We are then allowing ourselves a greater capacity to see, to feel, to hear, and move through with a greater vibrancy. Our light shines that much more brightly. Playing with this, I'm hearing brightly that much more. I know my language, English isn't always, and it's not supposed to be. So there's more. We have more light. We have a bigger current. Our frequency is enhanced. This allows us to fine tune all of our extrasensory abilities. An adaptation module. Let us play with this for a moment. For we are modulating and adapting our own signature and frequency conduction based on how we handle, this is all a play on words. I'm seeing a ladle and a scoop, and handling with kid clubs. I'm seeing a modulation with sound. I'm also seeing modules. So again, this leads me back to PSI, psi, units of pressure. Not sure. I'm being called to play with this. So let's. Oh man, you guys, I just have to laugh at this. So a lot of times when I'm doing these messages, I realize that some of the words I'm using are to navigate the quantum. And so some of the words I say don't always make sense, but they do on a cellular level. And what I'm being shown when I look this up, and I'll just kind of share briefly, is they're playing with the words here. My guidance team, the quantum part of me that's like, this is how quantum works. And essentially by us modulating our heart coherence, it is having an impact. So it is allowing us to control our reaction and our response time to what's happening in the field, to what's happening on the timelines. Now I'm going to go into this space. I wasn't planning on covering that in this video, but I'm going to. We are having a merge of timelines right now, or a parallel kind of weaving and intersecting is what I'm hearing. It's not that the timelines are necessarily coming into one, and I don't know how to really explain this, but it is a parallel, what did I just say? Intersection, and then parallel intersection, and parallel intersection. I'm hearing cross beaming. So this has something to do with, I would say, COVID. We're having this come up again and again right now. And what's happening is it's not just COVID, it's also all of the electrical impulses that are being sent out into our environment. And without going into the details on that, I'm hearing it's affecting our absorption process. So our absorption, how quickly we're able to move through this is going to dictate how long this continues. So what I'm being shown is a parallel to what I'm saying, to what's happening in the quantum, and it may not be happening on your timeline necessarily, or in your dimensional existence, but it is connected to what's happening in the collective in a particular, in this intersection. So if I look this up briefly, I'd been looking up pressure modulation. So what I was being shown as I was sharing this message with you is we're going through a pressure. The heart helps us in pressure modulation. It allows us to determine how fast or how slow we're going. And so some of us feel like we're going way too slow. Some of us feel like we're on high, we can't stop. We're just like, oh my goodness, there's too much going on. And it's a combination of this timeline technology, this energy that's coming in from the earth, the inorganic, and also this heightened collective incoherence, meaning fear and just hearing potential pitfalls. But what I'm seeing as I say pitfall, I'm seeing a racetrack with all of us on it at like the Daytona 500 or whatever you want to, Indy 500, and I'm seeing the pit crews. So we really have to stop and determine how fast we come into this pit stop. If we want to make a pit stop, and still somehow monitor and track, are we on the right track? I know that's a little bit confusing, but when I looked up, because I didn't know what excuse me, I just clicked on it. I didn't understand what pressure modulation was. Now I go when I'm in flow and I see where I'm guided to look up, and sometimes it has nothing to do with what I thought it would. Surprise, surprise. And essentially I was guided to look up ultra fast femtosecond pressure modulation of structure and exciton kinetics. Whew, I know that's a lot to say in one. Say that 5 times fast. But I'm going to share briefly. I'm going to share with you what I read, and then I'm going to share with you the synchronicities that are tying this all together for me, because I'm touching on something that's beyond what I'm able to explain here in this video. And perhaps I will go into it at a later time, but I don't know how many times I've said that in these videos. So the ultra-fast femtosecond pressure modulation of structure and excitation kinetics in 2D halide perovskites for enhanced light response. The carrier's transportation between layers of two-dimensional 2D perovskites, which is a crystal, is inhibited by dielectric confinement. Here, for the first time, we employ a femtosecond laser to introduce ultra-fast shock pressure to reduce dielectric confinement by modulating the structure and excitation dynamics. In a single crystal, the density functional theory, simulation, and experimental results shows that the inorganic framework distortion results in a band gap reduction. It was found that the excitation optical phonon coupling and free excitons binding energy are minimized at such and such shock pressure due to a reduction in dielectric confinement. The stability testing under various harsh light and humid thermal conditions shows that femtosecond laser shocking improves the stability. I have to laugh. This is hilarious to me. Femtosecond laser shock processing provides a new approach for regulating the structure and enhancing halide perovskite properties. Now, I know that we are not this crystal necessarily. My thoughts are there's going to be some technology coming out with this, some rare elements that are going to enhance our awareness of the cosmos and everything else this coming year. Maybe it has something to do with this. But if I go into this a little deeper, it's a parallel to what I'm talking about. Basically, all this stuff that's happening in our field, we are, do you guys get what I'm putting down? It's creating a distortion. I read it right here. The inorganic framework distortion results in a band gap reduction. So let's play with that, shall we? Hey, you guys are on this ride, right? With me right now. Kind of a wild ride, but it's fun to play with the multi-dimensional way of communication. Oh boy, so I just dropped into something big here that I'm going to have to go back and do a second video on. So let me stick with where I'm at. So essentially, if we want to play with this, we are optimizing our bodies if we follow these steps, for example, that are being suggested, which seems so simple, but this is what's happening. It's like we are making the adjustments chemically in our bodies in order to break through the distortions that are being implemented upon us. And this is not only literal, but it's also figurative. The distortions about how our reality works, the distortions about what we should believe in, the distortions about what we're being told is true and what isn't. Put this as a parallel and a parallel and a parallel. It's all connected. What I found interesting was when I looked up femtosecond. So we're talking about, what is that? And I was talking earlier about PSI and units. I originally was planning on looking at PSI and merging that all in with this. So we'll do that briefly. And then I'll get back to the channeling. If only I could figure out my, okay, here we go. So it's units of pressure, but also it has to do with wave function. So PSI in physics and chemistry is wave function in quantum mechanics. So this is what the guides are basically showing is we are creating this wave function, okay? And the units we're essentially, we've got all this pressure around us, and our bodies are working under pressure. As I said earlier in the message, we're being pushed on. But this is actually allowing us to elevate while we're in our bodies and counter this pressure by us enhancing our conductivity. And ironically, that's what I was saying earlier in the channeling. When I go into what my eyes are guided to look at, it has to do with the units of pressure. And when I go to femtosecond, it is a unit of time, okay, equal to lots of zeros, ones and zeros, ironically. It is 1/4 or 1/1,000,000th of 1 billionth of a second, which I think is super fascinating. But what I feel is very funny about this, because I brought up COVID and I was saying that I think this is somehow connected to all of this. 1 femtosecond is a distance comparable to the diameter of a virus. I'm on Google or Wikipedia right now under femtosecond. So I'll say it again. A femtosecond, a distance comparable to the diameter of a virus. And I know this has something to do with us. So there is this recognition that what we're doing as we go through whatever this timeline is that we're going through is we're countering this, and we're actually enhancing. It's kind of like what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Now, this takes me into, I don't know how I got here, but Bloch's theorem or Bloch's theorem. I'm going to call it Bloch's, so apologies if I'm messing this up. But I spoke earlier about a band gap. So it's talking about this ultra fast shock pressure. And the density stimulation results show that the inorganic framework distortion results in a band gap reduction. So a band gap, according to what I'm reading, is in solid state physics and solid state geometry. A band gap or energy gap is an energy range in a solid where no electronic states exist. In graphs of the electronic band structure, the band gap refers to the energy difference, often expressed in electron volts, between the top of the valence band and the bottom of the conduction band. So I was seeing us in realities and timelines. This is how I see reality. In insulators and semiconductors, it is the energy required to promote an electron from the valence band to the conduction band. The resulting conduction band electron and electron hole in the valence band are free to move within the crystal lattice and serve as charge carriers to conduct electrical current. Oh, so much fun. Now, you guys might be watching this and going, I still have no idea what you're talking about. I'm looking at this and seeing us as the semiconductors. So everything that's happening, we are creating. So when we go back into the heart and we lubricate our system with our pituitary gland, our pineal gland, our more glandular secretions that are created when we go into a place of coherence and bliss, that our brain essentially lubricates all of our valves. It allows us to increase our charge, to break through this gap. And I'm seeing the gap as, I'm seeing it as like when you have a leak in your brake line. I don't know why I'm being shown that, but an energy leak. So it allows us to kind of create the, what was it called? The insulator that allows for a faster lubrication. And it allows us to have more control and stability in order to conduct the electric current that allows us to send out our carrier wave or carry the wave longer in order to essentially break through this distortion. And so I'm talking about this on more of a obviously quantum level, but this is what I'm seeing. There's more that I kind of missed. This is so fascinating. Also, I was guided to show the Goldschmidt's tolerance factor. And this has to do with an indicator for the stability and distortion. So I was saying that earlier. Did I say distortion? I think I was saying I was using the word distortion of crystal structures. So I just thought that was fascinating too. So essentially, I'll have to look into this a little bit more and see what's, this came from, because ironically I was going, well, what does this have to do with perovskite, which is the, so I'll go into this a little deeper, but I think it's fascinating. So I'll come back into this a little bit more flow right now, and I'll kind of end on this note. You guys, we are so quantum. We are so much bigger than any type of AI structure. A lot of the viruses that are on a computer are handled by the mainframe directory, by the main brain, right? The heart brain. I'm utilizing these two interchangeably. We are the semiconductors. And so when we have a virus or malware, or what I'm hearing is a malware attempt on our structure, sometimes we are able to clean that up before it transpires, and I'm hearing transpires, into something that is, we can take this out of our system, and sometimes it requires us working with it. I know that sounds, let me rephrase that. It's so quantum. So looking at things from a different perspective, seeing what's happening in the field and listening with eyes to hear, also is part of us going into this field, this feeling of space, this feeling within the space of our bodies and within the space of our reality and environment. The more we can drop into that space, the higher resonance we carry, the more of an impact this has on any viruses in the body. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to potentially interact with them. It just means that how we interact with them and perceive them, that in itself changes our interaction with that particular entity, virus, energy, sound, frequency, whatever those distortions are in our field. And it really is quantum and so simple at the same time. So I'm just really being called to counter this field that we are essentially intersecting with. It requires us to find our own center and to reorganize moment to moment in order to harness and stabilize our own inner source of electricity. And I'm hearing self-generated electromagneticity, and that's a play on words. Self-generated electromagnetic energy, velocity, speed. But what I'm also being guided to share is don't be afraid to put the brakes on and stop. So I'm hearing part of this is about us. We're going to have this speed. We're going to have this momentum. And I'm hearing the more light we carry, in some cases, the more speed we're going to feel. But we are also being, I want to say required, but we're being called to pump the brakes a little bit. so that if we get going too fast, we don't, what happens if you hit the brakes too hard? We spin out of control. So it's that balance. It's recognizing when we've gotten a little too fast, when things are going too spinny for us, pump the brakes, slow it down, get back into the body, reset. But that comes with us seeing with eyes to see, listening with ears to hear, listening to what our bodies are telling us. Also, recognizing when we've gone too far down the rabbit hole of other people's stories. Pump the brakes before we get sucked into it, and then it spins us out to where we are unable to isolate the virus, isolate what's causing the grief, the frustration. And I'm also being called to recognize that it's many things. It isn't just one thing. So it's not that we're going to say, oh, that's what it is, but we're going to be able to isolate that feeling. And sometimes by us integrating that feeling that's associated with that program is what's going to assist us in cleansing out and renewing our ability to superconduct. So I know I just went way quantum in some of these, and there's a lot of parallels I didn't even isolate. We're going to go into that, but we'll come back to that in a different time. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that someone found this helpful and at least a little bit of fun. In love and light. Namaste, guys.